Yeah, I think that this was kind of like a temporary logo anyway.
Oh yeah. No, we're not even close to official at
Working
this point because
working title productions.
I'm working on page 4 right now, inking. So just
uh,
keep everybody on that.
right,
Uh, t-
of issue number 1.
of issue number 1 of Turbo Pit Fighter, a 21-year-old comic book in process.
Right. Well, it was in suspend. It was in the ice in suspended animation.
Cryogenics.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, and I did my homework since we last did our inaugural episode, and I went and dug up all this source material. As you can see, there's all these new notes here, and here's issue 2. So
Oh wow, okay.
as you're working on issue 1, which is pretty well fleshed out and developed, I am
Right.
fleshing out and developing issue 2. This goes through 4 issues, and then just to keep this like fresh, I haven't even looked past issue 2 myself.
Wow.
I don't even, and so that's pretty dangerous because a couple of things we have to discuss is how edgy this is going to be, how slash rated, mature or whatever, or rated R this is going to be, because
That's a moving target now, rated
it's
R.
so murky. It is.
I mean, just based on like television, that whole. I don't know if your wife forced you to watch Bridgerton
Mm.
or any of that.
I listen to it in the background, and I'm like, "What is
But
that corny
I
shit?"
caught a bit of stuff, and I was like, whoa. Somebody would have been going to jail 20 years ago, but now it's acceptable. And then I heard that I think the other show is called Euphoria. I haven't seen anything, but it's a
Oh,
bunch of kids in high
yeah, that's
school, and
yeah.
they're all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it's pretty, it's pretty racy. But yeah, I mean, based on her, her original name, and where we have developed as a society, and us just saying, you know what, let's go with Turbo.
Yeah, yeah,
And move
Turbo.
from there.
It's got the bow part.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll update you what's going on. All right. So
Okay.
in our first episode, as people know, this is a post-apocalyptic landscape. I'm a huge fan of Road Warrior, so I love these dystopian settings and everything. And so this is a world gone to shit. But only gradually over the arc of the storyline. With the flashbacks, you will see some civilization, still in I guess, in working condition, and then things get progressively bad, and the one thing that is emerging from that is these pit fights, which kind of reminiscence of gladiators days of old. But in our first episode, the main character Turbo goes through some flashbacks and some current day, or some present day sequences of fighting and ass kicking and total destruction and everything. And she's involved in a pit fight, and she meets the trophy girl. And the trophy girl, they kind of have this love and hate relationship, or the trophy girl is very resistant to Turbo at the beginning, and by the end, Turbo has saved her life, and they're kind of in the same boat, just in survival mode, as the denizens of the day are attacking them. In particular, there's going to be a group called the Hate Breeders, which are these kind of like skinhead guys that are pursuing them in a van, as in kind of vehicles, and they're in the good humor van, as the story ends, in the first episode. So that's just like to catch up where we were on a cliffhanger. These guys are being pursued, and when we come to our next issue, it's going to start with a flashback, And so this is what I think I'm going to be blocking out now. This is just some pinups that we were working on that are going to be stuck in the back of the comics, and I guess
Right.
that's always stuff that I can work on. But here I have a brand new page, and I was going to start blocking out page 1 of issue 2, and just so Kurt knows where this is going, it's going to open on a flashback scene. Here you can see these really rough thumbnails, and
Okay.
it's going to be young Turbo. It's 2 years later from where we left off, where her family was slaughtered, and now she's become a smuggler for the orphanage, which is a kind of like an underground railroad, operation. And she's sent out to do some of the most important missions. And in this case, it's going to this destination behind enemy lines to do a transaction of radioactive peas in exchange for something in a case that we don't know what it is yet. And here we see that it starts out where she's at a checkpoint, and the checkpoint is about to get bombed here by some drones. And then everything blows up, and that's her opportunity to sneak past enemy lines. Page 2, which I won't be drawing today, but there's a series of explosions, and she tumbles to safety, and then she goes into the little city area, the bombed out city area, to this family pharmacy, where this is where her contacts are, and there they're going to be counting out the radioactive peas and measuring them and weighing them, and in the meantime, this is a ma and pa shop, and meanwhile the Randy daughter is kind of like hosting Turbo in a back room. This is Teen Turbo now, and Teen Turbo is she looks like a boy, on purpose, because that helps her negotiate her smuggling runs. And this girl is extremely randy.
All right.
So yeah, so this
How randy is she?
well, in the original script, she they start making out back here, and this is in the foreground where you can see the parents are working on the counting of the radioactive pellets, and doing all that, and they're in the back room behind the screen. So this might just all be in silhouette back here, but you could hear all the dialogue, and the girl is like, take me with you, oh my god, I have to get out of here. And then also the fact that Turbo is a glower. Remember, Turbo doesn't have these veins on her face, and everybody else,
Okay.
all the normies, have these veins on their face because of the apocalypse that happened. It caused everybody's lungs and breathing to change, and they all got these veins on their face, indicating that they're not glowers, and the glowers are the kind of like the pit fighter class. They're stronger and more capable. And so that's kind of like Turbo's.
Is it kind of like mutant in
It's
classification, or is it just
yeah.
an
So
enhanced
no, that's a good question. It's more like radioactivity enhanced powers, and
okay.
the question is, is Turbo and glowers enhanced, or are the other people dehanced, right? You know,
Ah, good call. Good call. Yeah,
if that's even a word. But that
it is now.
those are kind of questions that that we can grapple with. But when it comes to how racy to go here, because you and I are veterans of underground comic days, we
Right.
this is like, well, what do we want to do? And I keep thinking that it's wise to just go no further than Marvel or DC or Image,
Right.
but but last night I'm watching the Eternals movie, and we'll talk about that later. But they're rolling around on the floor naked. The guy on top of the girl, just their torsos. And so, basically, this is what I did. Is that she's going to be, if you can see down here, she's going to be trying to reach down, downward here, and she's kind of like climbing all over Turbo. And so we will have to
Okay.
maybe be artful, but yeah, we are, straddling lines here, and she'll say things like take me," and Turbo's saying things like, "Boy, you really don't waste time." And this girl wants to get impregnated by the glower, as soon as the second she sees him. Now, it doesn't go very far. Once things really start to get hot and heavy, the parents bust in, and they're going to start punishing the girl, get back to your room and all that. And then the mom takes Turbo out in the alley, gives her explicit instructions. Here's the package, do not let anybody see it, don't look inside, do you understand, only give this to the headmistress. And these stairs will bring you back, we're being watched, all this. So the story is going to be like, very fast paced. Like I said, I'm just going to start laying out page one here, but that is where the story goes. And just to give you a little heads up on issue two, is she's going to go back to the orphanage, and there's going to be an attack on the orphanage. And the orphanage is going to get wiped out, and her next instructions are going to be to go give this package, which she doesn't know what's in it, to somebody who's in a prison, who's a POW being held somewhere. And so that's going to be the rest of the issue. And then we'll eventually find out that inside the package is a brand new weapon that is made of
Ooh.
radioactive peas, that you put like a radioactive pea in there, and it has this way of shooting like a chemtrail or something. And it's going to change, the whole fight. It's a new technology that will eventually change the whole fight as Turbo gets older and older, but this is like, groundbreaking stuff at the time.
Uh-huh.
And so the issue two is kind of fleshed out, and so we'll meet that other character at the end of issue two, but maybe we'll talk about that in a forthcoming episode. So just this is just like the near future. And that is only the flashback. Remember, we're going to cut to the present day, where Turbo's full grown, and they're going to deal with the hate breeders in the van, and there's just going to be some epic ass kicking going on.
Nice.
Great, man. So
Yeah, the one thing I was left with, just to um, bring it up again, was the whole Conan and revenge story. Mad Max has that same kind of, but it's more
yep,
family.
yep,
Him having lost his family and stuff.
yep.
But I was surprised and pleasantly taken with you saying, like, you had originally thought of it more like a romance.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I mean,
that
there's these edgy little encounters, right? I mean, this girl behind the pharmacy counter is going to be just like a one-off, but the trophy girl is going to be, the big romance. And we will have to see as the issues develop what happens to her. I think I might have peeked ahead a little bit and seen the fate of Trophy Girl, and so maybe there'll be a climactic scene at some point in some issue. What happens
right,
there?
right.
um,
Yeah, because I love or romance, I should say. Just staying with that doesn't have to just be some heartfelt swooning, and there's some sort of separation, and then there's the getting back to, as much as using that to um, dare I say, disappoint that process.
yeah, I think the love story is going to be, a theme. And then the action adventure stuff will be, constant. I mean, as I look at, the new Marvel movies and just comics, I think there's never enough action. That's why I love Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and all those, excuse me, all those guys. They really interspersed, total ass kicking action. And
Right.
sometimes modern writers get a little heady, and
Yep,
and
I
I
agree.
I just like a little bit of story, and I mean,
Yeah.
a good story, but like here, there's some writing, there's some stuff, between narration and dialogue. But I don't believe in like domination of word balloons, and writing. And then, maybe in one of these extra pages you have like a page of text or a page of prose, that catches people up on a lot of backstory stuff. So yeah, so there's just like, it keeps the story moving, right? Like every time you get to an unresolved question, there's just a whole bunch of action, and then you can come back to the question later, right?
I agree. I agree.
Right.
And that little string of interest, leading to some sort of like, truth, if you will. Like, is this true or is that true? Just based on the questions that are being caused, by having all of this, action and
Right.
whatever it is, whether it's, violence or sex,
Right.
it's just, you don't have to have
It's it
3 pages explaining, yourself.
No, but yeah.
The characters can do that on their own, and it could be actually within the simplicity of just their actions or non-actions.
Right. Yeah, and so and I think like I mean, people don't realize for the Marvel Comics in the early 60s, starting 62 with Fantastic Four, where they had some superheroes from the golden age, when they were timely and comics, and Stanley was just a teenage intern. And then Stanley people don't realize how old he was. He was 49 years old when he got the helm of this new comics line, and his uncle Martin Goodman, who owned Timely and Marvel and all these other kind of like fake name publishing outfits, Stanley was tasked with creating a new superhero universe to compete with the resurgence of the superheroes that were happening in the competitors. And so he starts just giving Jack Kirby these kind of really rough outlines, and they really just did it on the fly. I mean, the stuff that became like billion-dollar characters today were just like conceived of on the go. Like Scarlet Witch, she appears on the cover of like X-Men 4 or 3 or something, and she's green, because the
Right.
colorist thought that Magneto was red, and so she needs to be a different color. So,
Yeah.
so it's not like these things were thought through, like, oh my God, this is going to be a franchise, for
Or
generations.
established.
Right. And so I feel like, as we're just kind of like, cutting through stuff, make it up as you go, and then just refine it on the way. And just, get through, like keep moving. And there is going to be this backstory here. You see this RM all over the place. This is the regime militat. These are the bad guys that are like, conquering and invading this whole, post-apocalyptic world. But they are at war internally. There's this ruling family who controls all, and we explained it here. The controlling RM forces have been split, fighting bitterly between the ruling family, who control the automated weaponry, and about 250,000 common foot soldiers. And so that's what's happening when these outposts are being bombed. It's because there's a civil war, or there's an internal war, between the occupying army, and the people are just like, caught in the crossfire constantly, and their lives are worthless. But this is the backdrop that enables young Turbo to go around smuggling and go around, traveling around and getting around, because all of it's just a chaotic landscape, right?
Right.
Right. So we'll get into that, and then that will become important later, as I try to pattern the hate breeders. Again, I am updating this a little bit for nowadays. I'm going to try to update them with a little QAnon references and stuff. But the hate breeders will turn out to be led by one of the sons or the princes or whatever of the ruling family, who's just like this kind of like Bin Laden figure who goes rogue, and he goes down. He's a boots on the ground type of guy, even though he's fabulously rich and everything. And he thrives on hate. That's why they call it the hate breeders. They do stuff, and the cruelty is the point, type stuff. And so there'll be a couple of themes like that popping up. And so, I am trying to plot this out and plan things ahead so that there's all kinds of surprises and twists and turns and eggs. But but we're also just like kind of proceeding, and just going, through shit, just like mapping it out, and
Yeah, to get there, to get somewhere. I mean, I
right.
think one of the things I sort of miss about comics is the element of surprise. Where some storylines would get so far off kilter because it had so many writers and illustrators that they would get kind of placed in a corner, and then the new team had to deal with some of the crazy old crap that had been brought up, and then
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you have this whole new thing, and everybody's like, wow.
I know.
But
Can
it's
you
just
can you
it's dealing
imagine?
with.
Can you imagine taking over like Commandy for Kirby? Like the
Oh yeah.
like it's an impossible thing. No one's you're never
Yeah,
get it's never going to
exactly.
be the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Exactly.
or
Unless you make it completely your own, you just almost ignore some of the elements in order to get somewhere, and then bring the elements you ignored together with where you got to, and then challenge yourself as a creator to figure out that next spot. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing worse than like, oh, is that where up? Yep, that's where it's going. All right, boring. But even if it's going in a direction where you're like, wow, that's kind of interesting, I didn't think of that. How are they going to dig themselves out of that?
right, right. And then there's all the
That's
idea of a reboot, right? Where you just say, "All right, fuck it.
sure.
I'm just gonna like take this in a whole new direction, and just redo everything." I mean, yeah, you have a lot of really interesting teamings that had long runs, very successful runs, and then the title lived on for years or decades, but it was just never the same. Like I talk about, the X-Men run where we had Claremont and John Byrne and Terry Austin on inks, and there's never going to be anything like that. But the X-Men lived on. They brought in a lot of good creative teams, to do different versions of it. Right. The I think after that it was like John Romita Jr. had a pretty good run
Yep.
on it.
Yep. Yep.
So these I have this comic board. Just a technical question. I have this Strathmore Bristol lined for pages, and we got these non-repro blue marks. So I should try to stay clear. No, this is the trim line. Um, so do we have to like decide if we're going to go all the way up to the edge, or do we? Because anywhere from here in, I can take a little border, right? We just don't want to go beyond the trim line.
Well, I mean, with computers, we can always make adjustments for physical printing.
Right.
I always work, um, unless I've created, borders
Mm-hmm.
to the frame. A lot of times I will just work right off the edge. But then when I come back in Photoshop to get my pages ready for print, I might reconsider that and then say, okay, and then literally on the fly in Photoshop make a border.
Right. 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 So
So
I'm gonna.
we've got a lot of leeway just with the raw art, and then a lot of this is really just going to be downloadable digital format.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a big way people will quote unquote invest in the beginning,
But what about
before
word balloons? We don't want. Do we want word balloons to be? Do we
no,
want to try to keep the
no,
word
no, I
balloons
wouldn't, I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't run. Yep. Definitely within that.
the
What is
dotted
that?
line?
That dotted line would probably be about 10 by 15, right?
Yeah, I don't know. This dotted line looks pretty wide. I think this is pretty much being on the safe side here.
Yep, yep, yep.
But I'll do it. I'll just keep the word balloons in there. You know, it seems like a weird use of space, but we could do. You know, the narration is usually at the top of the panel. So I wonder, you know, I wonder how this works. Hmm.
Are you talking about like a block of narration
Yeah, the little
like
narration where it says
here we are in
yeah, meanwhile, right? Meanwhile would be at the very
right,
top.
right,
But if I'm going
right.
to the top of the trim area, so this assumes I'm going to have like just a
Nah.
blank border, right? So I'm going to go up I'm going to go up a little bit farther. I'm going to go maybe like halfway up the trim border here because this is the trim line, and like you say, we could always
Yeah, I mean, it could also that that box can float. It doesn't have to be attached to the edges of the panel.
right. Right.
So just you can just let it float.
Right. Right.
Unless that's something that's a big no for you. Drives you crazy.
Um Yeah, well, I just want, you know, I want good storytelling, but I don't want to find out, oh, your word balloons got cut off. So we'll have room here.
Well, who's going to say that? I mean, the worst, like I said, the worst case scenario is we can work it out in Photoshop.
Yeah, as long as we do that before it goes to print.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that the presses are all digital now anyway, and they don't.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so these trim lines. This isn't like the old days where you have registration
Nope.
issues.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Right.
Yeah, most of the books I've had printed were actually from people that most definitely had the machines in their garages. Like, they went out and invested, and then, you paid for a 20 book run, 100 book run, or whatever. Buy the copy instead of buy, the 100, 200, 500.
Yep. So I'm just gonna be
Because yeah,
drawing out
back
this
in the day,
panel
you'd have
here.
to pay astronomically for 10 copies from a printing press.
Stop. State your business. I don't know. I don't have to have the exact words right now, but we just have to have room for a word balloon.
Correct. And
And
then,
you know, people might not know that word balloons were added later in most Marvel comics.
yeah,
They didn't even put the word balloons
right,
in,
right.
and so a lot of them were like squeezing in and afterthoughts. Sometimes you actually had to reduce the artwork on a copier when it was still
Yeah,
black and white, and you had interns doing all that. When I interned at Valiant, that's what I was offered a job. You know, right away they needed somebody for $11 an hour to to do like whiteout touch ups all over this place and to resize artwork to make it smaller so that you could fit word balloons in. And I wasn't even the guy doing it. I was just like connecting the lines and making it all like crisp, you know. But
what year was that?
yeah, it was right when Colin Ferguson did the massacre on the Long Island Railroad because I had the job of going on the Long Island Railroad to Long Island where they had this like drum scanner place and they
Oh,
would Valiant Comics, which was run by Jim Shooter at the time, had this thing where they everything was just completely hand painted colors. So they would have these high res drum scans. And I was interning 1 day a week, even though I was already in my 20s, um, you know, to and they would put me on a train to go get these drum scans made with the original art. And I was on like a Wednesday and Colin Ferguson shot the Long Island Railroad up on like on a Thursday. Because I was on that train once a week, so you know I'll never forget that. But that's when it was. I think it was, you know, probably the early to mid '90s, and I learned a little bit about the business there. Um, you know, it was also interesting that Valiant used to get free copies of all the Marvel comics every month. They would come in, and that was a courtesy that Marvel and I guess Valiant did. They traded, you know, everything they all had so you could all see what the other people were doing as a courtesy. And then everybody used to fight over it when they came in. There was a lot of, you know, there was a lot of angling, to get the free copies and stuff.
Yeah,
But
I'd assume that was from the time Jim Shooter spent at good old Marvel.
yeah, well, this was when he was running Valiant. So
Right,
Valiant, yeah,
right. He's still
Valiant.
putting in.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Valiant was like an indie comic company, and are they still around? And their
I
biggest
don't know.
title was called XO Manowar, I think.
Yeah,
They had Archer and Armstrong, and they had a couple of titles. Jim Shooter was, he would take all the interns and say, "Okay, we're gonna do a tutorial at 3 o'clock. Everybody gather around the table," and he would show everybody how to like draw a metallic effect, or something like that. And it was interesting. They were right there in Midtown, so they had corporate offices and they had people working there in bullpen, and I got to see all that. It was really exciting. But I was basically just like changing the trash and getting coffee and stuff, and doing errands. And then wasn't like a month or two in when they said, "Okay, we're missing somebody in our lettering department. Do you want a full-time job?"
right, right.
So that's why it pays to go intern, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about? Let's see, how the ink's coming over there.
Nice, nice. I'm really getting back into the groove here. Um,
Yeah, I think
you know,
I have it worked. I think we have it worked out where the word balloons fit all the printed word balloons. We just got to drop them in later.
yeah, and then one of the things we're gonna have, because I've been experimenting with my own fonts. There's a man, I'm blanking on the website. There's a free level where you get a little diagram where you type out lowercase and then uppercase and numbers and question mark and just a minimum amount, and then you upload it to this program, and then it gives you your own font based on your handwriting. So I have been playing around with that,
Really?
but there's nothing saying that we can do something in the hand lettering department. I have been working on that through other people's pages, like old comic books, just
Hmm.
trying to find that sweet spot in, because there's so many comic book fonts out there that are obviously riffing on certain time frames, Silver Age Kirby, and just what have you.
Oh yeah.
um
Well, I always
so
thought the best. I always thought the best one was Tom Orschowsky.
yeah,
He was the best, and he was on X.
yeah,
He was on X Men. He was on a lot of
yeah,
different kind, and he was
yeah,
paid to do hand lettering, and
yeah.
he was just the best. And I don't know. I still remember his name, even though I butchered it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think too with the craft, I mean, we're doing a black and white book. Um, even it being digital, but I think the point a lot of other people out there that I've seen in criticizing new books, it gets down to how's the lettering, where a lot of people chintz out on it, and they just they buy what they consider their favorite looking font, and then just bam, slam it in there, and then put the whole book together.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I didn't
yeah,
want ours to be a computer font, so I figured at the time, let's print it out on a computer font and then just have somebody trace it by hand, whether that's me or you or
yeah,
somebody.
yeah. When we get to that road, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I'd rather see somebody clunkily handwrite something than just some static.
Yeah, if it's a computer font, you could always tell, even if it's a hand computer font. You know those envelopes you get in the mail, And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
dear Jake, yeah, and it's like, yeah, give me
Yep.
a break, man. And
Yeah.
like you're gonna like, this is junk mail. I rip it in half. But for us, I think just go over the computer font, and it just humanizes it. And I think it's important. I think because when I'm reading a comic and I see a computer font, you can tell, even if it's a hand, simulated computer font, it's just a distraction to me from the story. I don't
Yep.
know. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No, I think a lot of people it's that way. I think comic books have grown. Obviously, so many people out there making books, and they're going through their own process of discovery, especially, and then they find something, and sometimes don't work, But I think you know if it has a if everything has a hands handmade quality, I think it's hard to deny the book.
Yeah.
Then I think then it does become the story. Like, oh, okay, well, you're just taking Road Warrior and Conan, and you just got a bunch of girls playing everything out, whatever. But if it starts out that way, and the next thing you know, there's a spin twist, or like I said, I mean, even the romantic element becomes something engaging. I think that's where it comes down to, because just riffing off of popular trending, that it's just
Well,
it's not only boring, it's just, I mean,
they already did
how's it
the
going to generate any kind of interest?
yeah, they already did the female version of Road Warrior. That was the Fury Road sequel, which I thought was
Oh,
excellent.
yeah.
And
Oh, yes.
Charlize Theron
Yes.
was
Oh,
that
yes.
was great. And
Oh,
and there
yes.
was a male Mad Max in it, but he took second fiddle, I think, in the movie.
Was great.
Yeah.
Well, it was Tom Hardy.
Right, right,
No,
right.
he was awesome, and he was, I don't know, I didn't really have any like knowledge of him other than other stuff, and I think that was sort of like the
Yeah.
can
Well,
opener
he
for,
right.
like, you're like, it was like an everything, and you're like, wow, this guy's really good.
And
Well, Bane, I guess Bane for when he was in Batman.
and then he became
You know,
Venom too, right?
yes.
Right. So that was so he's definitely an action guy, but
He just wants that money.
by the way, don't see the new Venom. Let There Be Carnage. Do not.
Yeah,
It's
I really just don't. I don't. I'm just. I haven't seen the Batman yet, and that's top of my list. So that
yeah.
might happen this week. I missed an opportunity. A friend of mine I miscommunicated to. He thought I was going to breakfast, and I was actually not. And then he went to. He's like, "Yeah, about the Batman." I'm like, "What? What?" So
Well,
I missed my
yeah, I got to
chance.
see that too.
But
I haven't seen Spider-Man. I haven't seen Batman. I just caught up last night on the Eternals, and I saw the first episode of Moon Knight, which is great. Um, and Moon Knight is a series, so it's not a movie.
yeah,
And it's that really good actor. He's like a very expressive actor.
Oscar Isaacs, right?
Yeah, he was in Star Wars. He was in like
Yeah,
Rogue
he's a
One
lot of
or
stuff.
something, and
Ex Machina.
yeah, and he was also what else was he? Oh, he was in like this great movie about folk singers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He kind of played like a Bob Dylan
Yeah,
in the Village.
right,
Yep,
right, yeah.
yep, yeah. That was
But
a really good
but he's
movie.
good. He's really good acting, very
Yeah,
expressive, very
yeah,
like slapstick, and
yeah.
just really expressive. And so, um, I heard that people didn't like the first episode of Moon Knight and that it gets better, but I thought the first episode was just great. And I don't know, maybe I'm a Marvel stan, and I'm biased, but I don't, I thought it was great. I remember Moon Knight from this glory days with Bill.
Oh gosh, that comic! I could not get enough of that comic.
It was great. It was kind of like Batman, kind of like Daredevil, but it was this great interesting character with these crescent, like shurikens, and
Yeah.
this weapon, like he had this helicopter, and Bill Sienkiewicz
Sienkiewicz.
Sienkiewicz just took over and he made it his own, and they had a really good run. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping. This movie, this series, captures is that. So it's definitely worth checking out. And they have this.
My only thing, if I can interrupt, my only thing with a lot of this stuff, when it's being taken from comic books, um, I feel like sometimes they have too much time on their hands, and then they have to fill it, and then they end up kind of like making stuff. I remembered it as wonky. Like the first season of Daredevil was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was pure. I mean, I hate to say it, but it was pure by story, and just I even found like elements of like Nightwing from Teen Titans, and I mean, they were really playing, and then it just became heavy. I guess maybe that's where I'm kind of criticizing it. It was just a little too heavy. I don't know if I need to be here right now.
Yeah,
But and I
the
jumped in.
Daredevil series was great because, um, and I think they had like 4, 5, 6 seasons or something. Um,
Yeah.
it was great because it was low budget, and they still worked.
Yes. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was very low
Yeah.
budget and it still worked, and they
Yeah.
had really, well choreographed fight sequences. Um, and the story was really good from episode to episode. The actors were great,
Yeah.
especially Matt and Foggy and Karen, and and a bunch of others. And I really got into it. I just binged the whole thing last summer, or the summer before. I just binged the whole damn thing, and then they kind of like at the end it kind of seemed like they just rushed the ending, and they just ended on a dime. But they had a lot of great places to go.
Which, yeah, I think is it once again. I think the choice of medium, between obviously having so much more playland and time by series versus the hour and 45 minutes that you get for a movie. It's sort of like definitely like even backing into the Batman stuff. I mean, I think the Batman movie is the first time where they just look at. I think it's like 2 weeks of a case, a detective, that Batman is. So, and it's not leaning so heavy into oh, by the way, this is why he's this, origin, why, answer, where I think once again going back to especially the 70s, comic books in the 70s, there was very little answers. I think questions were spotty if it was just a lot of character movement or moving characters forward, and taking chances with characters,
Yeah.
and not feeling like they had to um, uh, resolve anything, and then there are so many like characters that got their first start in the 70s and then just disappeared because there wasn't enough interest by sales, but I think they've might have thrown people, try to drag them back out and relook at them and everything. But yeah, I think if they can be more like encapsulated, like an enclosed amount of time and dealing with the characters and events, and then it just stops. Just stop it,
Yeah.
and then somebody else somewhere, when they get enough money or whatever, and then they just start wherever they want to start with it. And if they choose to make a nod to somebody or lean towards and back into because, then let it be. But I don't really believe it has to be all encapsulated, you know. Have you
Yeah.
heard of this term? Have you heard of this term canon?
What's that?
Have you heard of the
Can?
term canon? Canon, like the Star Wars canon.
Yeah.
The I'm
Yeah.
and
Sure.
I still will sort of like, I don't know, just be a little questioning of it because it seems so limiting. Like, oh, you can't do that because that's not in the canon. Like you were like, what?
Right.
Doesn't make
Y-
any, to me that doesn't make any sense. To me, I think
Yeah. Well, it's
you need to take heavier chances with your property, and even the failure I think is necessary in order to get you to that next place. The just and I understand you got to pay people and the budget's got to come in and all this. I get it, I get it. But I still just get a little like, what the when people argue like, I don't like it because it wasn't in the canon.
right. Well, yeah,
All
they can't.
right.
That's like the sensibilities, I guess, and the within the story world, the continuity of the story and the world that they created, and
Well, the
yeah,
characters can't change. Like there can't be an event where a character, you know, literally goes from red to green as a character because, you know, a loss in their life, you know, another
right,
person, death, or you know, God forbid if they, you know, were in like a, you know, had drug addictions or, you know, had done something violent and then had to, you know, it just, there's just so many things I think, you know, real life, if you have to lean into it that much, you know,
well, that's
go against the canon.
yeah. There's the canon, right? Like you could say, like that's like a Marvel sensibility or a DC sensibility, or you could say that there's a comics code issue or standards issue that it goes against. But it's also a thing where the creators are always trying to do something new and different, right? And originality is the fuel in the tank, right?
Uh, well, originality, yes, which I think is really difficult nowadays because I think the everything's been done twice.
Yeah,
It's now your personal and to be creative interpretation of something.
yeah,
And I think that's ultimately in the arts, whether it's through comic books and television or TV shows or books or comic books. I believe that's just the responsibility, you know, determining, um, you know, how to um, get noticed and you know make some change.
I mean, the good part about that though is if you're a creator, um, you can just step into a character and reboot it for another generation. And there's so many characters there. I mean, we should talk about that because when I'm an art teacher by day. I have a classroom and I teach kids stuff, and I love superheroes and comic history and stuff. And there were dozens of heroes before there was Superman. Superman was the first one with superpowers per se, but there was dozens of heroes. There was Tarzan and Lone Ranger and the Phantom and all that. So there was lots of heroes. And then before there and for females, before there was Wonder Woman, there was lots of super heroines. There was like one comic with an invisible lady. There was Phantoma, who turned into a demon. Some really
Yeah,
bizarre stuff.
Fletcher Hanks.
There was some
Yeah,
satanic stuff. And all these characters have gone by the wayside. And all these characters could conceivably be revived just by bringing them back out alive with a new creator and finding the estate and clearing the rights. I'm sure they would be happy if it was done professionally, and to keep it alive for another generation. they only have upside. They haven't been getting a dime off it for 60, 70 years. And I'm not just talking about these couple of characters. There was Nelvana, who was like a Canadian superhero.
Yeah.
Um, there's dozens, not if not hundreds, that have all gone by the wayside and are just waiting for somebody to step into it, and revive it for another generation. So I think if you're a talented comic book creator and you're willing to, either work for a company that's securing these rights, or maybe do the legwork yourself, go secure the rights to an existing thing that's dormant, a dormant property. Go clear the rights, and then go do conventions and go make it a whole new thing, make it your own. And you know, I don't like. Aren't you involved in one of those writers, like doing that with kind of bringing it back and republishing the stuff and adding new illustrations?
Yeah, yeah, the Gardner Francis Fox library. I inadvertently started only because it all started with that. I was actually trying to get rights or permission, not rights, excuse me, permission to do my own Conan story. And at
Uh-huh.
that point, that was like, it was impossible. And I don't really want to get into all that at
So
this
that's
point.
the
But
that's the state of Robert Howard, though, right?
no, no, it gets into a whole. I can't even remember most of it. There's an international property now, and it's controlled by an individual,
Huh.
I believe, at that, what have you. But the interesting part was is I had just gone online and searched for sword and sorcery character public domain,
Right.
and the next thing I know, Crom the Barbarian in 1950. 51,
Okay.
yeah, was done by Gardner Francis Fox and John Junta. And and it was actually an insert, a full color comic insert, with two other stories, in a pulp magazine called Out of This World. So, not the I get into all this, at another time too, but the whole thing I did not want to just appropriate the work. In other words, I just didn't want to strip everything that, because there was 3 10-page stories, and then just do whatever I wanted to do, because that's not what I was going to do with the Conan stuff. I was actually going to be going back to, um, the time period, when Conan was a pulp character, Robert E. Howard and all that. So anyhow, I started looking more into Gardner Francis Fox, and found that, not only was he writing comic books for DC, but he was also writing pulps. He wrote pulps till 52, and then from yeah all the way even beyond his death, in 86, they were still printing paperback stories. He wrote 156 paperback books. There's still paperback books that are there that have not been published, that would need editing and stuff. So I had taken his last pulp story, which was called The Warlock of Shardor from Planet Stories, 1952, read it, and found that it was this science fantasy stuff where you really just had to manipulate the quote unquote quasi science into sorcery. And so I did that. And then I put some illustrations together, and, so on, so on, so forth. But to stay on topic, it was, and I think there's actually, I have a Facebook fan page group for Crom the Barbarian. And there's, I think right now there's 6 of us doing our own versions of Crom the Barbarian. I did 4 stories.
This
There's some,
is
there's,
sequential art comics.
yes,
Right.
yeah, comic books.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep, yep. And then there's also my illustrated story and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I did find that there was a limited audience to sword and sorcery, I think, in comics. Um, Even trying to lean into the whole Game of Thrones craze. Um, didn't really bring anything and help. Um, but on my website or on the website, or no, even mine too, both the library, Gardner Francis Fox Library.com, and Kurt Brugel, I think I sell printed copies, and then you can download a PDF.
Uh-huh.
I have all the pages up too for nothing. You can go and check them out and read them. Um,
So
so
yeah, so a good
yeah,
example of, a dormant franchise, and how anybody, like I remember when I was starting out in Flash animation, I did an animation sample using hot stuff, and I contacted Hot Stuff the Little Devil, remember, from Harvey and of Casper and Richie Rich Company fame,
yep,
and they were looking for somebody. They wanted, a creator or a company to, revive their stuff at that time. This is probably late '90s. I did the sample, and nobody's doing anything with hot stuff. It's probably been decades. Why wouldn't they want somebody to do it? But you just don't want it to be amateurish. You don't want it to, embarrass anybody. And then, once there's actually money being made, that's when, it gets really dicey. All right, how much goes to the creator? How much goes to the people who just, own the franchise but haven't been doing anything with it? What's not? Lawyers have to get involved. And it's amazing how many characters are out there, how many great characters are out there, and not doing anything. And so, it would be great if some of these, could come back to life. I mean, you could just take the stories as they were and just redo them, reboot them for the modern audience. And, you wouldn't even have to, because if the problem right now is like there's nothing original, right? Everything's been done.
yep,
Then
yep.
let's go back then, because that's what Hollywood is doing, for God's sakes, right? I mean, everything is a reboot or a sequel, or and it's just been that way for decades. And
Well, I think one of the things that we're actually heading into is content is king, and the ownership of content is one thing. But I think the other thing is how do you get it out for your established fan base, and then how do you encourage others to come in? I mean, I've seen some. Um, what
hello,
I
you
think,
there?
what is it? There's five
Oh,
streaming channels, between Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Shutter. As a horror, but there's going to be content needed. So I think the name of the game is either you're going to do your own version of Mad Max and Conan and call it Turbo Pit Fighter, or you're going to try to romance whoever owns, you know, um, going back to the Conan thing, twice. I think Netflix was the last one, but Amazon was supposed to do a television series for Conan, and it was all it's 13 of the original pulps, which were going to be turned into um, television episodes, but I can't remember why it all fell apart. I think it had to do with, the owner of the property and wanting certain things to be certain ways. And Amazon finally said, it's not something we're worried too much about. So let's put it on the back burner. Oh no, it was a change of leadership. I think it might have been Amazon, and it was a female. Um,
the
uh,
thing got shelved.
yeah, I got shelled because it was stuck in production, and she had to make green lights for projects to go. And I think she just said, you know what? I think there's enough male testosterone television out there, and like, once again, it goes back to the popularity of Game of Thrones at that point. So, um, You
So
know, I mean, there's so much that goes in behind the scenes, especially for television. But getting back to the whole like comic books, I mean, are you reading anything right now?
in comics,
Yeah, like, is there
well, when I
something
go
like
into
you're
a
like,
comic book store, I just like, wow,
yeah.
everything is so expensive. So I flip
Well,
through
that's right,
I
right,
flip through
right,
stuff, and like
right.
I just saw, there's a comic book store in my little town here, and I just saw something that I actually wanted to buy. They're starting to reproduce all the old Marvels in these thick books, and all reconditioned, recolorized, and cleaned up and beautiful, and it's like these classic runs. Like who wouldn't want to have like all the Werewolf by Nights under the Mike Ploog
Hell yeah,
years,
hell
like
yeah.
so. But these editions are $100, but I mean it's worth
Yep,
it.
yep,
I'm
yep,
about
yep,
to go
yep,
buy some of this stuff because it's
yep.
worth it. But then it's like wow, I'm a little bit backed up on my reading because I have two books I'm reading right now. One is Marvel Comics by Sean Howe, and it's which is incredible, and I'm like reading it so slowly on purpose. I'm savoring every page, and then
Right.
I start to read the Secret History of Marvel Comics, which is crazy. It's really like a picture book. It's like all the covers and all the visuals, but it has, all of this research on Martin Goodman and the origins of the company, and it's a must read. It's like, so essential to understanding how everything came about and how accidental Marvel really was with Stanley and Jack Kirby and all these guys. And I'm still only, I'm not even up to the Stanley era in that book yet. But they say like how many people were secretly moonlighting under different names, how many people were doing
Yeah.
like cheesecake stuff, how many people were doing like all kinds of like other stuff, lawsuits, and did like the one big thing from the beginning. I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but the one big thing from the beginning is that Martin Goodman, who owned Timely Comics and Marvel Comics, and he owned the name and everything. He had he was a criminal and a shyster and a thief and a copyright pirate, and he was he was cited and fined many times for false advertising and repackaging comics, that were already published, under a new title and a new cover, and basically the same stories. And if it wouldn't be the same
Yeah.
stories, they would change the first paragraph and then change some of the names, and then but like he was exploiting all of the creators. He was exploiting the law. He was exploiting the readers, and he just was cranking out these kind of like sensational covers and the pulps. The pulps led way to the comics, and then he was also doing
Yep.
magazines, and it was a dog eat dog business with really thin margins. There was organized crime involved in
Mhm.
distribution, and then there was, the government was involved in cracking down on copyright law, and then later on the standard stuff, with Dr. Wortham. So it's just amazing, and what people really need to understand is that Stanley and Jack Kirby, they are like Lennon and McCartney. They came together, and
That's a good one.
they created Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, the X-Men, one after one after the Fantastic Four, one after one after one after one after the other, just on this incredible roll. They were not making the kind of money that people might think. It was just being done for the love, and they were inspiring an entire generation of babies, like you and me, who wanted to get into this, like just like when the Beatles was on Ed Sullivan, right? Everybody got a garage band together after that.
Yeah.
So what people don't realize is that all of these franchises, right? I mean, just take one. Let's just take Thor, right? They're making their fourth movie. It's $1 billion franchise, just Thor alone. Just in terms of worldwide gross sales, and Um, and it's just going to go on forever. And this was something that these guys dreamed up, at a drawing table with a deadline looming, and there's oh, let's take Thor. It's public domain, it's an
Yeah.
Asgard, so that's just one. Think about how prolific these guys were, and then to do the Black Panther and to do the Ant-Man and the Wasp and all of these things which have just been coming out as Hollywood blockbusters one after the other. And Hollywood has never seen anything like this either. You know, um, it's really amazing. I think they said that. Um, I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just in terms of box office, they've never had a single company dominate the top, out of so many of the top 100 movies, in a given year, or top 20 movies in a given year, and then they've done that for many years running already, and it doesn't look like there's any slowdown coming. We have Morbius coming out. We have the next Thor coming out. The Eternals was just I think January, and it just hit cable. Um, Doctor Strange is coming out. And it's all just
I think that one of the things that has me bothered and concerned as a comic book enthusiast, not even an artist, but as an enthusiast, is this is majority wise persuading people to basically just hold up their time as it is after work and on the weekends watching television and going to movies or watching movies, on that. So the getting individuals to get into comics, I think, is actually been more and more. And the comic books themselves, like the quote unquote Marvel comic books of Doctor Strange and all that, that's just advertising material. It's there. I've heard that their print runs are just there to,
oh,
keep
definitely.
people to, be aware of it,
Definitely,
so
they're
it's
the
not
print
like,
the print Marvel's print division is just in a holding pattern that they've
yeah,
been in for probably 30 years, 40
yeah,
years.
I'd be surprised if they were
You,
turning a profit,
but you have to. I mean, now that you're making inordinate money on movies, inordinate amounts of money, right? I mean, Marvel has never seen the kind of success and profits since the first Iron Man movie was a Hollywood blockbuster, and they couldn't believe the response. It just became like a mainstream everyday thing for everybody to go do and see. um is that the comic division, it is kind of like like a little league for talent to come up, because some of these script writers will graduate to the Hollywood division.
yeah, but that's why they get into comic books in the first place, is so they can go in and work in Hollywood, but and cash in there and stuff, which is all fine and dandy, but my point is still based in you know good comics. Where are they and who are making them? um, you
Right.
know, and just to interject, kind of break up what's going on. We've been at this for like an hour. I know you and I could go on until Tuesday morning, but we need a, like, hey,
Yeah.
let's wrap it up and get everybody excited about
Well, yeah. I'm
the
I'm I'm
next
almost done.
episode.
I'm almost done with this one panel, so that's all I was able to do during this time.
Right,
Because as people might see, is like you do something, you rethink it. You're
right.
moving these things around. You can see the process here. I'm kind of slow. I'm a little bit out of practice, so I'm kind of slow. These things used to flow, like much quicker. I mean, you
Well, you
could.
had a lot more time devoted to it. I think that's
Yeah.
another part. We were, every free moment was devoted to the craft. I'm doing my best to get back to that, but I have what's considered a real job,
Yeah.
you know,
But
and
no, but this is a great stopping point if you want. We definitely talked about this and that. And we're making some progress here. This is fun. I'm getting into this again. I hope to get faster. Also I'm talking, so when I'm thinking about what I'm saying, your hand is moving, but
yeah,
if you're doing the design part, as opposed to like the inking part, your thoughts are really like, what am I doing here? you know, um,
right, right, yeah,
and so that's part of it. But it's also interesting, to talk about comics, and as we're doing this, right? Because you're thinking about all your
yeah,
influences, and you're thinking about
yeah.
all great comics of the past, and as you're making a comic, so
Yeah, I mean, I just like want to reiterate that we're doing this to promote what it is we're working on. So the channel's devoted to Turbo Pit Fighter, and our process, and the process of making a comic book. And we want to share that, with others, and I think this, the kind of ease of how we're able to do this, I think is just a real testament to, doing it, and then get some get some people who are excited about it, on
yeah.
on board with us, and see where it takes us. But I'm really excited that you called me and you wanted me to help you with this. And
Yep. If
yeah,
for
let's see
anybody for
let's see what's
anybody
going on.
listening that wants to get in touch, if you are a comic book creator, if you're a penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, this is a project that's getting off the ground. By no means is this the only title that we could be working on, or the only project that we could be working on. We also have ambitions to release our stuff as NFTs, besides print and besides web comics, and just like pretty much any format that we can get this content out to the public. Not only to monetize and have success so that we can do more, but also for the art of comics and the love of
Yeah,
comics. And so get in touch. The contact info is down on the bottom, and don't be shy.
yeah, definitely. All right, well, here we are, episode 2. And what I'm going to do is put it back to the title card, um, and then we can both say our goodbyes. Here we go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kurt.